Hey, this is Andrew and welcome back. JetBooking 4.0 is out, and today we're building a complete multi-vendor booking platform from absolute zero. The big update here is the new vendor role built into JetBooking. It gives vendors a clear set of allowed actions so they can create and manage their own booking products independently, but still under admin supervision. We'll look at how this works in the backend and then take it further. Using JetEngine and JetBooking, we'll build a proper front-end vendor cabinet that makes day-to-day management much easier. We'll run booking in WooCommerce-based mode, which means bookings become products, and we can use WooCommerce features like the cart, checkout, and multi-item orders right out of the box. So expect a lot of Crocoblock classics here: profile builder, front-end post creation, query builder, and listings working together. Let's jump in. So let's quickly look at what we are starting with. Like I said, this site is built from scratch. At this point, I've only installed a few plugins. Right now, I've got JetEngine, JetBooking, and JetBooking, which is the free plugin. On top of that, I'm using the JetBooking Pro add-on called User Login Action, because I want to create a simple login page for vendors. WooCommerce is also installed and activated, since in this setup our booking items are WooCommerce products. And finally, I've installed Elementor. The free version is totally enough for this tutorial. We could also do this with the WordPress block editor or bricks. Overall, they work great with Crocoblock tools. But with Elementor, I find it really convenient to build the profile area with templates without relying on any extra plugins. Now we need to do a few basic setups so everything is ready for the multi-vendor setup. First, go to JetEngine, Modules, and enable Profile Builder and Dynamic Calendar. These two are essential for the vendor account area, and the calendar view we'll build later. Make sure you hit Save. Next, open JetBooking Settings. Here the key step is choosing the right booking mode. You'll usually see two options, plain and WooCommerce based. For this project, we're going with WooCommerce based mode. In simple terms, this means bookings are handled through WooCommerce, so your bookable items are treated like products, and we get all the flexibility that comes with that. We'll talk about why this is useful a bit later. If you choose plain mode, bookings usually work with posts or custom post type. But in this tutorial, we won't build the system around posts. We'll build it around WooCommerce products instead. While we're in WooCommerce, let's open the plugin dashboard. There are three things we need to do here before we move on to continue the setup and to be able to test bookings properly later. First, we need to add a product. This product will be treated as a regular physical product, so we'll use the first default WooCommerce product type. The other options, variable products or grouped products, aren't necessarily here. A simple product works perfectly for bookings integration. This product will basically act as a booking item, just like the ones vendors will later create themselves. We'll also use it as an example when we start building listings. So let's give it a name, add a short description, and set a product image. This is just the standard WooCommerce product editor. In the product data section, switch the type to JetBooking product. Then scroll down to the pricing settings and set a price per night. After that, we can publish the product. The second thing we need to do is set up payments. Without payments, bookings simply won't work. If you go to the WooCommerce payment settings, you can configure full online payment gateways. Here I'll go with the quickest option just to make the testing possible: cash on delivery. In a real project, you'd obviously set up proper online payments, but for now this is more than enough to continue building and testing the booking flow. And finally, let's click Launch Your Store to ensure the website is live. Let's move on and create the users who will act as vendors on our website. From the WordPress dashboard, go to Users and click Add New. I'll enter a name and an email, those are required. And I'll use a very simple password just to make it easy to switch between different profiles while testing. Now with the new JetBooking version, you'll notice a new user role here, JetBooking Vendor. This is the role we assign to users who will be selling and managing booking items on the site. So I'll select that role and save the user. This is a standard user creation screen. After saving, we can still edit things like contact information, billing, and shipping addresses. That contact information can also be edited by the users themselves later. Now, what if we want to add some extra information to vendor profiles? Something custom that we might want to display in vendor listings or on their profile pages. This is where JetEngine comes in. Go to JetEngine, Meta Boxes, and create a new one. I'll call it User Meta, choose User as the object type, and make it visible on both Edit User and Profile. That way, the user can also edit these fields on the front end. As an example, I'll add a simple text meta field for a position or occupation, and another one for a user image using a media field. Once that's saved, if we go back to the user we just created, you'll see these new fields at the bottom of the user editing screen. I'll quickly fill in the occupation field and upload an image. And finally, let's add one more user with the JetBooking vendor role, just so we have more than one vendor to work with as we continue building the site. Now that we have a sample product and a couple of vendor users, let's create the listings that will appear on the homepage. Because our booking items are WooCommerce products, we'll need a query-based listing. So before creating the listing itself, there's one small but important step to do first. Go to JetEngine, Query Builder, and create a new query. Give it a name. For the query type, choose WooCommerce Products Query and set product status to Published. That's all we need here. Save the query. Now we can move on to the listing. Go to JetEngine, Listings, and create a new listing item. As the listing source, choose Query Builder and select the query we just created. Give the listing a name, choose Elementor as the editor, and create the listing item. We've covered listing creation many times before, so I'll keep this part quick. Inside the listing, I'll add a dynamic image widget to set the source to the WooCommerce featured image. Then I'll use dynamic field widget to show the product title and another one for the price. Finally, I'll add a dynamic link with a Book Now label, which will lead to the product page with the booking form. Such a page is created by WooCommerce by default, and to link to it, simply choose WooCommerce permalink as the source. Next, let's create a listing for vendors. This time I'll create another listing item but set the listing source to users. Here I'll use a dynamic image for the user image, a dynamic field for the occupation we added earlier, and a dynamic link that will lead to the vendor's properties. Unlike with the product listing, I will not finish setting up this link yet. It will point to the vendor's single profile page, which we'll build in one of the next steps. Once that page is ready, we'll return to this listing and complete the link settings. This still isn't all the listings we're going to use today, but let's already place the ones we've created onto a page that will serve as our home page. We can reuse one of the draft pages by Elementor. As you can see, pages already have a header and footer coming from the default WordPress theme. I'll adjust the header and navigation later. For now, this is perfectly fine. On this page, I'm going to add two listing grid widgets. One will display all properties and the other will display our vendors. There's one important thing to keep in mind here. If we use the user listing as it is, WordPress will also show the admin user, which is obviously not something we want to display publicly, unless the admin is also acting as a vendor. To avoid that, we need another custom query. So once again, go to JetEngine, Query Builder, and create a new query. This time choose Users Query as the query type, and set a condition so that only users with the JetBooking vendor role are included. After saving the query, I'll go back to the home page and assign this query to the second listing grid, the one that shows vendors. At this point, we already have the page that regular site visitors will see. From here, they can browse available properties, view vendors, and eventually move on to booking. Now it's time to take care of the website part that's meant for signed-in vendors. We need to create a dedicated area where vendors can log in and manage their accounts, their properties, and their bookings. So the next big part of the setup is built around JetEngine's profile builder. Let's go to JetEngine, Profile Builder. Here we need to assign 3 pages: an account page, a user page, and a single user page. The last 2 will be public, while the account page will only be available to signed-in vendors. Before assigning anything, we actually need to create these pages in Elementor, but there's one important setting to change first. In Profile Builder, switch the template mode to Content. This way, all the subpages we add later will be rendered as sections inside one page, instead of being separate pages. That makes the whole account area much cleaner and easier to manage. I'll start with the account page. This is the main place where a vendor will manage everything: their items, upcoming bookings, and booking-related settings. Thanks to the Profile Builder widgets, setting this up is very straightforward. I'll create a simple 2-column layout. In the left column, I'll add the Profile menu widget. For the context, I'll leave it set to Account. This widget automatically generates navigation links to all the account subpages we'll create later. Styling can be adjusted afterward, when we actually have those subpages in place. But for now, I'll just switch the links layout to vertical. We might already see one link here, as the account page has a default template. In the right column, I'll add the Profile subpage content widget. This widget acts as a placeholder. Once we create subpages, their content will be displayed here when a vendor clicks on the corresponding menu items. Finally, let's add a logout button. For the button link, we'll use the standard WordPress logout URL. This will log the user out when they are done with working on their profile. Let's create the 2 remaining top-level pages for the profile system. We've already done with the account page, so now we'll focus on the public ones. First, let's create the page for all users. I'll call this page Agents. Here I'll add a listing grid and reuse the vendor listing we already created earlier. Just like on the home page, I'll apply the custom users query that targets only users with the JetBooking vendor role. Next, let's create the single user page. I'll name this page Agent in singular. This page is meant to show information about one specific vendor. Inside this page, I'll add a few dynamic field widgets to output user data. For the vendor's name, the source should be set to user data. For any additional fields we created earlier, like occupation or user image from the meta box, the source needs to be metadata. Below that, I'll add a listing grid that shows properties created by this specific vendor. We'll reuse the same product listing we used on the home page, but this time we need a new custom query. I'll call it Vendor Items. The query type should be WooCommerce Products query, and in the general settings we need to set the author ID to the queried user ID macro. This way, the listing will automatically show only the products created by the vendor whose page we're currently viewing. Now let's go back to the Profile Builder dashboard, where we can assign the pages we've just created to their correct roles. Once that's done, we need to set up the internal pages for the account page. To do that, open the Account Page section in Profile Builder. This is where you'll see the list of account subpages. We don't really need the default main subpage, so I'll remove it and click Add New Subpage. For each page, we'll set a title. This is the label that will appear in the account menu, and a slug. After that, we click Create New Template. A pop-up will appear where we enter the template name that will be used for building the profile page and choose the template type. Here we select Elementor template, then click Create Template. There's also an option to hide the subpage from the account menu. This can be useful if you want to reuse the template somewhere else but don't want it to appear as a menu item. Another important setting is role visibility. For example, pages related to managing properties should be visible to users with the JetBooking vendor role, but they don't really make sense for administrators who are not vendors, so we simply don't include the administrator role here. For this multi-vendor setup, these are the account subpages I'm going to create. First, user info. A simple page where a vendor can quickly view their own profile information. Then, My Properties, which will show a list of the vendor's properties with links to edit each one. I'm also going to create a separate subpage called Edit Property. This page will contain a form for editing a property, but it won't be visible in the main account menu. The idea here is that this page should be only accessed from the My Properties listing. If we make it available directly in the menu, the form wouldn't know which property to edit, at least not in a clean or intuitive way. Opening it from a specific property listing makes that connection clear and easy for the vendor to understand. Next comes Add Property subpage, which will contain a form for creating a new booking item. After that, Booking Configuration, where vendors can adjust their global booking settings. Then Schedule Settings, used for setting working days and time availability. And finally, a booking calendar, which will display upcoming reservations in a visual way. Once all subpages are added, don't forget to click Save to apply the changes in the profile builder. At this point, we've only created empty templates. If we check the account page now, we'll see the menu labels on the left, but clicking them won't change anything yet, simply because there's no content inside those templates. To start filling them in, go to WordPress Dashboard, Templates, Save Templates, or Elementor Editor Templates. Here you'll see the templates for all the subpages we just created. Let's go through them in the same order. For the user info template, we can add dynamic field and dynamic image widgets to display data from the user profile. For the My Properties template, we want to show a list of properties, but with a different behavior than on the homepage. Instead of linking to the property single page, each item should link to the Edit Property subpage. To do that, we first need another listing. It will be similar to the properties listing we used on the homepage, and will use the same All Properties query. The difference is the link. The label will be Edit, the link source type will be Profile page, and as the target page we select Edit Property. To pass the correct property into the edit form, we also need to enable Add Query argument for the link and pass the current product ID as a URL parameter. We'll use this new listing on the My Properties account subpage by inserting it there with a listing grid, and it will use the same custom vendor items query so each vendor only sees their own properties. Next, let's move on to the Edit Property template. This template needs a form, so we'll create one with JetForm Builder. Go to JetForm Builder, Add New, and start with a blank form. This form needs to know which product is being edited. That product ID is passed from the listing via the URL parameter, so the first field we'll use is a hidden field. For its value, choose URL query variable and set the query variable key to the same one we used in the listings query argument. After that, I'll add fields for all the product data a vendor should be able to edit. For example, the product title, price, and featured image. Now let's configure the form actions. In Post Submit actions, we'll enable Insert Update Post. For the post types, we select Product. The hidden field that contains the product ID needs to be mapped with Post ID will update the post option. The post title and featured image should be mapped to post title and post thumbnail, and the price field should be mapped with product regular price. With that in place, the form is ready to be inserted into the Edit Property template. Next, let's fill in the Add Property template. This one is even simpler. It will contain just a form for creating a new product. So we go to JetForm Builder and create a new form from scratch again. I'll add fields for the property title, price, and featured image, just like we did in the Edit form. For the Submit actions, we again use Insert Update Post. For the post types, we select Product and set the status to Pending Review. Map the form fields to the relevant product fields like we did before, with the exception of Price field, which now maps with the default JetBooking Post Price field. Note that initially this form creates a simple product, and the admin needs to switch it to the JetBooking product before publishing. Once that's done, we insert this form into the Add Property template, and the vendor can start creating booking items directly from their account. Next up is the booking configuration template. Here we don't need to design anything, we just drop in one widget. It's a new JetBooking widget called Settings Configuration, and it basically gives the vendor a dashboard to control how bookings work for their items. The key thing is to understand that these are the vendor-level global settings. If the vendor doesn't change anything here, the website will use the global configuration set by the admin in the JetBooking settings. But the moment a vendor changes even one option and clicks Save, JetBooking starts using the vendor's own saved configuration for all of that vendor's bookings. And on top of that, there can still be a per-item booking settings. Those can override both the admin global settings and the vendor global settings if they're enabled on a specific property. As for what this widget controls, the most important settings are the ability for the vendor to define the booking period logic, whether bookings are calculated per night or per day, which directly affects price calculation. Also, users can control date selection rules, like allowing checkout-only days, restricting bookings to week-long stays, and setting limits such as minimum days, maximum days, and the latest allowed end date. There are also a few usability options for the date picker, like showing a clear button, enabling month and year quick selection, and displaying the price directly inside the calendar for each date. Once everything looks right, the vendor simply clicks Save buttons, and those rules immediately apply to their bookings. There are also 3 toggles in the widget's content settings. They don't change how bookings work, they simply control which groups of settings are visible inside the widget. So if you want to keep the vendor interface simpler, you can hide whole sections. And even though all these options come inside a single widget, you still get pretty detailed styling controls, so you can match the design of the settings block to your vendor dashboard and keep everything consistent. Next is the schedule settings template. Just like before, we only need to add one widget here, the settings schedule widget from JetBooking. This widget gives vendors full control over time and day availability. Here they can define general availability, set specific check-in and check-out times, and add specific days off. These settings are exactly the same as the ones available to the admin in the JetBooking dashboard, and also similar options you see when configuring availability on an individual booking item. The priority logic works the same way as with the booking configuration widget. If a vendor doesn't change anything here, the global schedule settings defined by the admin will be used. Once the vendor saves their own schedule settings, those will apply to all of the bookings. And if a specific booking item has its own schedule configured, that item level setup will override both the vendor and the admin settings. The content visibility toggles and styling options follow the same logic as with the previous widget. So you can control which sections are shown and adjust the appearance without changing how the booking logic works. The last template we're going to work on is the booking calendar subpage inside the vendor account. This page will also use just one widget, the Multiday calendar. It's a recent addition to JetBooking, and it allows bookings to be displayed on a calendar spread across all the days they occupy, instead of showing them as separate entries for each date. Before we can use the calendar, there are a couple of simple setup steps. First, we need a listing source for the booking data, and just like in a few previous cases, this will be based on a query builder. So let's go to JetEngine Query Builder and create a new query. I'll call it Upcoming Bookings. Set the query type to JetBooking Query. Then scroll down to the Date Query section. Add New Date Query clause. Here choose check-in date as the date field, set the comparison operator to greater than, and for the value use the today macro. We also need to make sure vendors see only their own bookings. For that, go to General Settings of the query and in the vendor field select the queried user ID macro. Once that's done, save the query. Now we'll create a new query-based listing. I'll keep it very simple and just add a dynamic field widget with the source set to product title. After that, we'll use this listing in the Multiday calendar widget on the booking calendar template. There we also need to set group posts by to booking date, so the calendar knows how to place bookings across the days they cover. We're almost done with the setup. There are just 3 more small tweaks. First, back at the beginning we created the vendor listing, but we left the link unfinished. So let's open that listing, the one for vendors, and finish the dynamic link settings. Set the link source to profile page, and as the target choose the listing user page. Since we didn't create separate standalone templates for the user pages, we can simply use the default slug that Profile Builder suggests. Second, let's create a login page for vendors and connect it properly to the site. I'm going to create a new JetForm Builder form with 3 fields: a text field for login email, a password field, and a switcher for Remember Me. Then we add 2 post-submit actions. The first one is user login. It comes with the JetForm Builder Pro add-on. In the user login action settings, we map the 3 fields from the form to the login, password, and remember options, and save the action. The second action is redirect to page, and as a destination we select the vendor account page. After that we create a separate login page and place this form there using the JetForm widget. One more step. Go back to Profile Builder, open the main settings for the account page, because this page is not public, and set the redirect URL to your new login page. And finally, now that all the profile pages are ready, let's make an adjustment to the site navigation so testing everything is easier. Go to Appearance, Themes, Customize for the active theme, then open the navigation section. Here you can add the pages you need and remove everything that isn't relevant. This way it's easier to switch between key pages while checking how everything works. While we're here, I will also set the page where we place the listings for properties and vendors as the home page. Let's now test the website, starting from the perspective of a regular visitor. On the home page, we can see the properties listed at the top. Right now there's just one property, the one we created at the very beginning. It has a Book Now link that leads to a single product page with booking functionality. This page is generated by WooCommerce, and because WooCommerce is integrated with JetBooking, the booking logic is already in place. We'll test actual bookings a bit later. If we scroll down the home page, we see the list of vendors. Notice that the admin user is not displayed here, only vendors are shown. Clicking a vendor opens their single profile page where we would see properties if they offered any. Now let's try accessing the account page. As planned, we are redirected to the login page. I'll log in as vendor 1 and I'm redirected straight to my vendor account with all the subpages we created. At this point, my properties is still empty. Let's check booking configurations. I'll make a small change here. For example, I'll set the maximum allowed booking length to 7 days and save the settings. The booking calendar is empty for now, which makes sense because there are no bookings yet. Now let's test Add Property. I'll enter a name, a price, and upload a featured image. Since we're working from the Frontend vendor cabinet, the image is uploaded directly from the computer. After submitting the form, we see a success message, but the property doesn't appear in My Properties yet. That's because it still needs to be approved by the admin. Let's switch to the WordPress dashboard, still logged in as this vendor. Here we can clearly see how the new vendor role works. The dashboard is available, but access is limited. In Media, we can only see the files we personally uploaded, for example the image we just added for the property. We can't access media uploaded by the admin or other vendors. If we go to Products, we see our new product marked as Pending. When we open it, there's no Publish button. Publishing is reserved for the admin. Let's create another product, this time directly from the backend. The process is very similar to what the admin sees, but some options are restricted. for example, changing categories or tags, which is intentional. For this product, I'll enable a custom schedule. Remember, this vendor already has global settings that doesn't allow bookings for more than 7 days. But for this specific booking, I'll allow check-ins only on Friday and Saturday. I'll submit this product for review as well. One important thing to note here is that for the fields, vendors are allowed to edit. They can make changes freely, whether the product is still pending or already published, without additional approval from the admin. Let's continue exploring the vendor dashboard. The booking section is still empty for now, so we'll come back to it later. In booking settings, we see the same configuration and schedule options that are available in the front-end vendor cabinet. For example, we can confirm here that the maximum booking length is set to 7 days, showing that back-end and front-end settings are fully synchronized. In the profile settings, the vendor can edit personal information, contact details, and the custom user meta fields we added earlier using JetEngine meta boxes. Now let's log in as the second vendor, create a couple of booking products, and then switch to the admin account to approve them. As expected, this second vendor doesn't see any media files yet because they haven't uploaded anything. Once we log in as admin, we go to products and see several items waiting for approvals. There's one detail here: products created from the front end are not automatically set as JetBooking products. Before publishing them, the admin must change the product data type to JetBooking product, otherwise booking functionality will not work. Let's also test how admin-level global booking settings affect vendors. For example, I'll set a global end date that limits bookings to the next 2 months. Now I'll log out again and visit the site as a regular user. On the homepage, we now see multiple booking products. If we open vendor pages, we can browse their properties and start booking either from the vendor page or from the main listing. For the first vendor, we know they have their own global bookings configuration. When I open one of the properties and try to select days, I see a message asking me to choose a date range between 1 and 7 days. That's the result of the vendor's own maximum days setting, even though the admin's global settings limits bookings to 2 months ahead. I'll proceed and add this booking to the cart. Now I'll check another property from the same vendor. It still has 7-day limit, but it also only allows check-ins on Friday and Saturday, because we configured that at the individual booking level. Before checking out, let's look at products from the second vendor. This vendor doesn't configure any vendor level settings, so there's no 7-day limit here, but the admin's 2 months restriction still applies. I'll add another booking from this vendor and go to the cart. What's interesting here is that even though these bookings belong to 2 different vendors, the user sees them as one order. This is handled automatically by the integration between JetBooking and WooCommerce. Now let's see what happens on the backend. Logged in as admin, I go to WooCommerce orders. I see 1 parent order and 2 vendor suborders, 1 for each vendor. In the bookings dashboard, we see 3 separate bookings, 1 for each booked product. The admin also has access to the vendors page, where all vendors are listed along with their products, bookings, and profile links in one place. When vendors log in, they can see only their own bookings. They can update booking statuses, filter bookings, and switch between list, calendar, and timeline views. In the front-end vendor cabinet, the Multiday calendar is also updated and shows bookings spread across the actual days they occupy. Finally, let's test Edit Property from the front end. I go to the vendor account, open My Properties, click Edit on one of the listings, and change the featured image and price. After submitting the form, the changes are applied immediately and we can see them right away in the properties list. And that's the full flow. The main feature in this release is the new vendor role in JetBooking. Each vendor gets a restricted WordPress dashboard where they can manage only their own booking items, media, and bookings, without touching global settings or anyone else's content. And with JetEngine and JetFormBuilder, you can also wrap that workflow into a clean front-end cabinet, so vendors don't have to work inside WordPress admin. Since this is an early release, feedback matters, so if you test it, share what you find. Subscribe for more practical builds like this, and I'll see you in the next video.